Amen.
Okay.
Calm down, the lawbringer.
Son's playing Fortnite. So, like, I usually try to throw in some basic rendering just to get this started. So then I'm like, okay.
I know. I'll rate that as a 3.
So, like I said, I've been getting into this new style. So bear with me. I don't talk because it's a little bit more thought invoking.
It's cool.
We'll see. So let's get like the samurai get up going too. Right.
Mm.
And so then I'm like, okay, how do I design, like, how do I design something else based off of this same premise? You know?
Yeah.
And so I'll just start thinking. I'll say, all right, well, I already kind of get the samurai. What else would be cool? Oh, you know, like freaking like a buzzsaw. That would be really funny. So I want to do that next. All right, so let's do the buzzsaw. So it's like the same idea.
Lawbringer, Centurion, or Highlander.
And give this guy like a cool beard. And it's like strapped right underneath this thing. It's got one of those kind of bicycle buckles. And it's like a real buzzsaw. I'm trying to think of like the motor, like the wiring. Right, it's not really a mohawk, so you have to have like layers. So maybe there's like blades intercrossing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like pivoted on like the same gear system. And they're just all, yeah, like I'm only doing the bust, but like it would be funny if you had like his hands and he like had like a bicycle kind of thing. Like I would actually have to think this through to design this really cool, but then that would be one idea, and then I'll paint this. You know?
Yeah, yeah. That's a pretty cool idea.
Sorry to ask a question midway, but are you just drawing all of this on a single layer?
Duh.
Okay, that's good practice. How do you, I guess...
Not good practice. It's just how I do.
I guess my question is then like, so do you just kind of learn to kind of control your brush opacity so it doesn't like just cover over your underlying drawing?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, easier said than done for me, but yeah, okay. I understand
It is
the
easier said than done. Exactly right. It's like the questions that you were asking. I think the last Q&A. Remember how we're talking about like which tool, right? Like type of questions are hard to give good answers to because it's ultimately lying to somebody if I just say, oh yeah, you know, it's this. Like this specific kind of thing I've actually been asked before, and the way I usually answer it too is that very much like I'm about to answer it now, which is that you know, I can talk about like anatomy and perspective and all that stuff, but ultimately you still have to do it. A good parallel would be like I could tell you how to get in shape and to how many push-ups you need to do, but if you don't ever do push-ups, then it won't matter what I told you, right? So it's good practice to just get good practice in.
Part of my personal agenda is just to kind of like try and understand like how other people approach their
That's
work.
a good agenda.
Right, because I've been so used to a certain way of doing things, and I realize how efficient and effective
Oh yeah.
you've been showing, and I just wanted to get some insight and to see if I can start trying to like kind of understand like the underlying approach so I can try it on my own.
Yeah, ultimately, or like the best way to get to this level is to really understand how to manipulate your tools, as well as being a good painter / designer. If you listen to this morning's class lecture, someone asked something about along the lines of like, what am I thinking about when I'm drawing? And my answer to that question is nothing. And then I preface it with, well, what do you think about when you walk? Do you think about walking? Right? And people's answers are usually no, they don't think about walking, right? They just walk. And I said, that's exactly what it's like whenever I draw. Except the specific process now, because I actually have been practicing it more. Right?
Kind of reminded me of like you kind of sounded like Bruce Lee like there for a second. So like, okay, cool. I think I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah, like you should you got to get the push-ups in. Is ultimately what I'm saying. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was trying out my iPad, and he's like, "Oh man, the sensitivity is like really hard," or I forget what else we were looking at, but he was just complaining about the tools like the whole time. And then I was just like, I asked him a very specific question of like, well, I just saw lightning, I think. So if my power goes out, apologize. Yeah, if my power goes out, I'll let you know. Well, I won't let you know. It just will cut out. That's crazy random. So I said that because it's like muscle memory, right? It's like practicing. You know what I mean? Like you got to just practice. And if you don't practice, then it's harder to have it built into your subconscious, you know? So a lot of what I do is built into my subconscious. I've practiced design and anatomy for so many years that I don't think about it, you know? The only times I think is whenever I'm doing something I haven't done that often, or I'm actually trying to come up with a good design. Then I have to think like this headgear, like I would have to actually stop and think, how the F is that going to look? You know?
Yeah, like just so kind of like, it was very insightful when you were sharing the video of that like studying versus copying. So in that similar vein, I guess I was trying to like kind of get more insight into like how you would approach it.
All right. But anyways, okay.
Yep.
So hopefully you understand what I'm trying to get at here. Iterations. I'll do another one. I'll just keep going until I think I got a good idea.
I see.
I don't stop. And if you don't have any ideas, then that's why you have to keep gathering reference. You ran on empty, you have to keep looking at stuff. But for me, I have practice on constantly thinking about different ideas. So I'm like, that's my job. It's what I do for a living, right?
Right.
People
Right.
pay me literally to come up with even better ideas than they thought of, right? But visually. Like I work for a client and they say, hey, we have this idea, just to keep it kind of NDA friendly. Like they always said, like, we need some sort of medieval knights. And then everybody else that works for them is drawing medieval knights, just kind of cooler versions of that. And then I come in and I draw medieval knights that look like no one's seen before. And then they usually do really well in comparison, Because
Right.
drawing just the standard, typical medieval knights that everyone's seen before is just one Pinterest search.
Right. That was my problem, actually.
Yeah, or one Google search. Rather, I think Pinterest gives you more opportunity to find some stuff that's a little bit more awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But you get my point.
Yep. Do you usually prefer to have a big differences between iterations?
Yes, that's what I think iterations are. Like they're principally like my iterations are usually my thumbnails.
No.
Right, I usually paint really elaborate thumbnails. As you can tell, like this didn't take me too long, right? Like I would do like a full thing. It would take me probably a full day to do like good 10, 15 really nice drawings if I was focused.
I see.
Okay, and then they look really detailed. Like if you see some of the concept stuff that I do for freelance, you would think so.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, what? Like usually the response is like my sketches or thumbnails is what people do for their finished work, right? Some of the stuff I do for the higher end clients, and so not for all of them. Some clients I do go much faster; they look a lot looser. But other clients, I know they want some quality, so I try to do quality. So anyway, good luck.
Right. Thank you.
All right, so maybe for her, you don't try to do finished versions; just do several iterations until you find one you like.
Sure.
And then for the other two, you're going to work on refining them. Okay.
Right. Will do.
Cool beans.
Cool
All right, we're going to take a break here. Get 10-minute break, and then we'll pick it up with Q&A. So start thinking of questions you'd like to ask. In the meantime, get some water, do some stretching. I'll talk to you guys soon. Hello, everyone. Back. Wife is freaking out because of the thunderstorm. Anyways, questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I've actually got one. It's kind of, well, anyway, I won't be able to make the last two lessons, unfortunately, because I'm flying over to the other side of Australia for PAX Australia. So I'm just wondering what to sort of do about that. I can still submit for the second last lesson, but I mean, all I'll have with me is like my sketchbook, so I can do something with that. But yeah, I'm just wondering sort of how to move forward with that.
No excuses. Cancel the trip. What are you thinking? This class takes precedence. Yeah, that's okay, dude. I usually tell people that. Oh shoot, screen froze. I usually tell people that they should, go to events and do these types of things. So if that's something that you're doing, then I'm supportive of it.
Yeah.
So I think you should go. If you still want to submit whatever you can, whatever is available to you. I'll accept it. It's all good, dude.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll sort it out as it gets closer.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Thinking.
Oh yeah, Cassandra had one. Let me go ahead and read that
There we
one.
go.
So
Oh.
that's-
Let me yeah, go ahead, Alex, and now I'll go for Cassandra's.
Okay. So remember back in the day, you showed me the thing to do, like make the shape with one brush stroke and like fill it in with the brush stroke.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So there was
It just
you were about to assign like even a different thing that said like, okay, do this thing to control the value, but you kind of cut yourself off. I was wondering for the longest time, like what that exercise was.
To control the value. I'm trying to think of the
Yes.
context
give me your computer.
of the conversation.
Yes. Thank you. Where's your password? Yes.
It was
Oh,
like
I
an
know
exercise.
what it might be. You got to do this,
Yes.
basically. You got to create gradation.
Give me all your games.
Like that. You know, like basically control the intensity. Like, can you go 5% each time? Like adjust it by 5%.
Oh, what does that help you? I mean, aside from kind of, I think I understand what it helps you with, but
What do you think it helps you with?
well, creating gradients on in areas where you want to create a certain shape, right?
Well, no, it's just to control your values. If I know I'm like hitting like about a 50% gray, then it's helpful instead of always trying to figure it out or guess. Right?
Oh, I
Like if I know that I'm at like a 20% or 100%, 100% I believe is white. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Then I can paint pretty effectively. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's probably why I gloss over this. It's nothing crazy. It's just like some basic like housekeeping with getting better at painting. I don't think I'm going to use this reference. I'm just going to keep these sketches, which I rarely do.
How important are orthographics in and that kind of stuff in the process in a studio?
Pretty important. Depends on the studio, but most studios prefer to have something like this.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's pretty
You
simple.
usually have them.
Yeah, you guys are asking pretty simple questions. We've got good answers to, or easy answers. Rare. Yeah, because your concept art is just the plan of an idea, right? It's like you know, we have this idea of like a cool samurai character or whatever, but then we need to know what he looks like from behind, from the side, his proportions, you know, because someone else is going to have to make it.
Yep.
You know, and if you don't have that information available to them, then you know, it's going to be a problem.
So it's something you do pretty much.
Yeah, almost for all major studios that I work for, I've done plenty of orthographics. Yes, it's pretty standard.
Sure.
Depending on what kind of orthographics they want, can depend on the studio. For instance, some studios are okay with like just like a good front and back, like 3/4 front, 3/4 back. You know, because they may have like a good modeling team who can kind of interpret really well what your concept's kind of about. And then you have other teams who outsource a lot, and so the people that they give it to, they have no idea if they're going to be able to stick to the plan, and so they want you to have like very clear orthographics that it's almost like it doesn't matter who gets their hands on it. You know?
Yeah. Do you usually do them at the same quality as the first image, or?
They're actually sometimes better because again, what's the objective of the orthographic?
To explain everything.
Yeah.
Not
So,
just.
yeah, exactly. So if you have something that doesn't explain much, then what are you doing, right? It's like maybe it won't be in color, right? That's a thing that I might not do because I think the color version might be enough. but
Sure.
but definitely it's more detailed. You know, and for obvious reasons, again, because you're passing this artwork down to someone else. It's like giving orthographics like as like blueprints. So imagine like throwing blueprints to somebody, and it's like trash blueprints. You know, like are they going to be able to build a house from those blueprints, or are they not? Here, let me show you.
Yeah.
Right, like this schematic is like a lot, very helpful, right, to like a construction person, I'm assuming, versus just like this, you know?
Yeah.
So like it has to be pretty clear, because you have no idea whether the person that's going to take your concept has any real interpretation. Like a studio I'm working with, like I was helping with some of the hiring, and they were like, we did like art test with some person, and they did an okay job, but like it was clear to me that they cannot interpret, right? And so they have an indie budget, so I said, you know, if you're going to hire him, this is what you need to consider, that he won't be able to do stuff, you know.
What is their challenge?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and if that's the case, then you have to be prepared for that. You know, you have to be prepared that he can't take our ideas and really run with them.
Yeah, gotcha. No, I was asking because it's not something you see a lot in our station, or I mean, you find them, of course, but
Yeah,
it's not
because most
something.
people like to put the best work forward, and orthographics are kind of boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
yeah.
think they're very valuable. I think if
Sure.
you were to show them, that would actually bring some value. But yeah, I've
Right.
done it a lot. But here's another thing: like, if you can paint really well, you can most likely do orthographics.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's you don't necessarily need to prove it. You know, it's only if your like work is super sketchy, then they might like want you to kind of prove that you can do it. Right? If like you have like really sketchy work.
Uh-huh. All right. And what about what's a good time frame to render a concept in the industry?
It all depends on where you work for. So for film, it's like that same day you should have like 4 or 5 rendered concepts. This is why you see people use photo bashing or 3D a lot in that industry.
What did you say? A day?
Yeah, and then that's film. And then advertisements is even faster. Games, like I think a good like week to a month. It all depends on like when I say like a week to a month, what I mean by this is that it may take you a month's time to finally like finalize a design, but it was like one of many designs that you were doing. So it's not like really like a devoted 1 week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like what you guys are doing in class, right?
Yeah, you've been doing it.
Yeah, where you
do
guys
a lot of shit in this, at the same
yeah,
time.
you guys do multiple characters, you know, you don't just do one. Like very rarely will you just get like one thing to do. I think when you first start out, they might do that just to kind of get you acclimated. But like get you, you know, feel more comfortable in the studio environment. But after like, you know, a couple of weeks, they're going to start throwing stuff at you because that's why they hired you. They need work done, you know?
Yeah. Do you think there's it's easier to get a job in the movie industry or
it's harder to get a job in the movie industry?
It's harder, right?
Yeah, because the demand of quality is much higher, as well as the crazy workload.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Can you guys hear those thunderstorms? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I just heard that.
Yeah, that was loud.
Is that near you? Like, where is that?
Yeah, it's close to Irvine. That's where I'm at right now.
Huh. I had a question.
Hold on. Cassandra had a question. I never got to it.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let me get back to it. Let me go ahead. I've been told in order for your portfolio to stand out, you need to specialize. But I've also been told you need to show diversity so that a studio can use you for all different kinds of projects they might be working on. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you approach building a portfolio with both of those things in mind. My portfolio at the moment has mostly Disney-style type work, and I'm doing the more realistic diesel punk stuff to push out my comfort zone and grow. So I think I talked about this in the morning class. So this is probably why I feel like I've already answered this question. So I'll talk about it now. So the best way I like to explain this specific thing is that you have two circumstances that you should consider. And there's obviously gradation in between, but the two that I want to talk about is this. That scenario one, you have a studio, the AAA studio, and they have, let's say, $1 million budget to employ artists, specifically concept art, the concept art team. Let's just say they have this much money to allocate. And then you have the indie studio, and they have $100,000 to allocate. And this is, let's say, for 1 year of employment. Okay? So now imagine this. Your studio that has $1 million, and the average salary for someone who does like a very specialized work is somewhere between $80,000 to $100,000, right? On average. So someone like me, like a really specific person who does a very specialized thing. So then, you know, someone that's more specialized will most likely start somewhere around 80K if they're lucky. Sometimes if they start smaller, it might be lower, but if you work for a big AAA studio, yeah, you'll probably land 80K. Okay? Because in their eyes, they can hire like 10 of you, right? They might have like one or two that are way above that, like they could be like 120 or 150 even, you know? But they will still have money left over to hire like maybe 4 or 5 lower end guys or gals who are just not as big in the industry, right? But they have extreme skills, you know what I mean? And they're incredibly specialized. And that's not necessarily them looking for specialized. They just happen to find people they just want the best. And people who specialize tend to be the best at that thing. And then you have the indie studios who are like, okay, we could probably only hire like 2 artists if we want to pay them fair wages, right? Because even if they do like a 30K salaries, which is pretty fair for very junior level people, they almost have no choice but to hire those who are more generalists. Do you understand? And so I like to position this scenario because when people see it this way, they immediately start to understand why I suggest you should be specialized. It's not that it's easier for you to get work. It's not that at all. It's just that when you get started, you'll start running. It may take a little longer, actually, but it's a good place to start. Because this is what happens. Imagine that you get hired at the AAA studio, being specialized. Let's say you're doing, let's take McKinsey, for instance. Let's say, you know, the stuff that has been submitted is the stuff that is ultimately turned in, right? And so this work is like really, really good, but it's very specific, right? The style is very specific. It's like anime-ish, you know, with like a contemporary look. But that's like what we're looking for at this AAA studio for whatever reason. Maybe we're working on some sort of crossover game, and we want someone that has that aesthetic. So then you're going to be surrounded by other people who are equally as powerful, as good, and are skilled at that one thing. So you tend to level up pretty remarkably. But if you go to a triple or indie studio, you almost will be surrounded by other artists who are relatively subpar. So your opportunity to grow is actually pretty static. you know, because the people next to you are not going to potentially, inspire, ambition. And I'm not trying to knock either or, saying one is better than the other. Like inherently, I'm just saying that for growth, like working around people that are much better than you is always going to be better. And it can happen at an indie studio, and it can probably not happen at a AAA studio. But the chances of it happening in a AAA studio are pretty high, and the chances of it not happening in an indie studio is pretty high as well, right? And so you need to really recognize this. And another thing to consider is that it's not that the indie artists sometimes they want to hire like that, these rock stars, but they just can't afford it. And it's sometimes worth the cost to hire just a few rock stars, because if you think of it in these terms, like let's say you had 3 generalists and you had 1 specialist, and each of these generalists are really good or pretty good at little things, each thing. But the specialist is amazing at character design. Let's just use that. So it's not like this. It's not like adding up all of their character design skills equals the same quality that we're going to get from that one skilled individual. That's not how it works, right? And interesting enough, this person who's skilled may not be a good environment artist, but they actually might even be better environment artists than these generalists, because what makes a person who's really good at one specific thing will tend to make them pretty good at all these other things, because they have a stronger sense of foundation and fundamentals. And it's just a subtle transition phase, more than anything else. And so this is something that I always encourage people to consider whenever they're working, towards like finding a really good career. You want to try to get those AAA jobs, even if it takes a little time. But if you work at an indie studio, you still want to kind of get in on a specialized, kind of, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for. You want to kind of get on the, what did you say?
Role, a specialized role?
Yeah, you want to get in the specialized role. I think that's a good word to use. Because then it will, again, at least do one thing that will help you even become better at that one thing. Because when you spread yourself a little thin, it's harder to really master any one thing. Well, my friend said it the best. It's like, it's really good to be a jack of all trades, but you should be a master of one. Right? Like, I am a good example of this. I am a jack of all trades. Like, I can start to program. I know a little bit of modeling, animation, all this stuff. So I have like kind of the indie developer, mentality in terms of my generalization, right? Generalized skills. But I am one of the most revered concept artists, specifically in character design, right? I'm like up there. I'm in the top, at least the top 100 maybe, right? And so even if that means I'm 100, I'm still up there amongst hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other artists in the same position. I wouldn't say millions, but probably hundreds of thousands, definitely a lot of them, right? And I mean specifically concept artists, not artists in general, because then it would be in millions. But I'm talking about like concept art, the field, like people who know what that field is. Yeah, definitely hundreds of thousands. And so that's a good position to be in. I'm really sought out for this thing, so I can dabble into these other skills that don't necessarily, it only makes me a better character artist as well as just starting to learn these other trades. And so
with that, sorry, man.
Yeah, go for it.
With that kind of mindset, would you specialize even on a genre or like a subject matter? Like, would you start specializing in, I don't know, fantasy?
Oh yeah, so I think like so you're saying like subcategories of specialization, right? So
yeah.
like I will tell people, like, you want to specialize in as many things as you can. Like, you want to kind of really boil it down to a few things. So I am clearly a character artist and like character concept artist, and I specialize mostly in realistic characters, like they're mostly realistic with some style, right?
Yep.
And then within that realm, I'm pretty open. I can do fantasy, sci-fi. These two things specifically are probably my preferred places, you know?
Yeah.
But essentially that's where I'm at, right? And my creatures and monsters are not too far behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But did you started doing all of those things, or would you?
Yeah, when I
started,
first
like,
when I first started, I tried like environments and other stuff because I didn't know any better either. But once I just like focused in, then I got really good really fast.
yeah, but I'm talking about those subgenres, you know, like sci-fi, fantasy. Were you doing all of that stuff at the same time? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was,
relatively, but because they're not that. I mean, if you really want to specialize in, yeah, I think you can just focus on the one thing. But usually people don't do this. They'll do like environments, and they'll do like props, and then UI. Like that's too broad. But if like I'm doing a fantasy like samurai isk character design, it's not that much harder to kind of then just move over to a little bit more contemporary, like, or not sort of contemporary, like more like fantasy, like Game of Thrones style, you know? Like my understanding of materials and understanding of materials and forms and anatomy is all pretty similar. Like all I have to learn new, right? There's only a couple things to learn new, which is the aesthetic of that universe, of that kind of like worldview, you know?
yeah.
But like to be able to draw a character effectively, like paint well, like that doesn't, it's not all over, it doesn't start all over again, right? It's like if I was to transition from a free runner, like a parkour runner, to a rock climber, you know, or vice versa. Like I think that transition would be easier. Not to say that it's just like, oh yeah, not, like just because you're really good at rock climbing or just because you're good at free running, now you can do this other thing really easily. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that transition would be much easier, right? Because they're very similar. Like they're relying on a lot of very similar body mechanics, but you just got to learn like the nuances, you know, the nuanced differences. And I tend to see this. I have friends who either were rock climbers and then tried, you know, free running and then they do really well, right? Or vice versa, or didn't transition to some calisthenics alone training, you know?
Yep.
It makes sense because it's pretty similar, you know, like bodybuilders or like powerlifters who transition to bodybuilders. That's a natural transition, you know?
Yeah.
But if you were to say to me, like a rock climber now to try to be a bodybuilder, even though they're both exercises, that's like much more challenging. Just like if I were to say I went from character design to environment design, right? That's a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
Even though I have like core understanding of lighting and forms and all this kind of cool stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, because I saw a video of Bobby Chu the other day. He was talking about specializing, and he was talking about like how in his portfolio or whatever, he was like, I'm a concept artist, more like a creature artist, designer.
Oh wow!
Fantasy,
Hey, not
like going
you're not in there to go
from
stairs.
subgenre to subgenre, you know, what he was saying, like
Ceiling.
always that, you know, being so specific with what you do. So I started thinking about like, oh, should I do just fantasy or could I do fantasy and sci-fi and
Yeah, you could do both for sure. But like to Bobby's argument, he's like one of the best at that kind of creature character
Yeah.
design, you know, like
Yeah.
because he's so specialized. So it's true. Like the more specialized you become, obviously you're going to be really good at the thing. So if you take a look at like if you take a look at what like Vitaly Bogrov, right? Like he's another great example of this,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Just robots.
Just robots, and he's like the guy.
Yeah.
He's the robot guy.
Is he designing actual robots?
Yeah, he's designing actual robots. He's that good at it. That's why, you know,
Nice.
That's crazy.
it is crazy, but it makes sense and well deserved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're looking to like work for like smaller studios, which is nothing wrong with that. You know, there's a lot of love to be had for that. Then being generalized is more opportunist, right? But like I said, like you'll get paid less ultimately because of that career path. You know, it just doesn't pay a lot. But like the alternative, like I've been saying, like if you just become really specialized, you know, you get like sought out because you really stand out. You know, like you're like one of a kind.
Yeah. Sure.
And that's really hard. But they exist. People do it all the time. Okay, so and I'm saying many of you guys, like I don't see why you guys can't do the same.
I had a follow-up question.
Sure.
Subject of specializing. So you're saying that like it's nice to maybe if you specialize into one area and trying to branch out and try to specialize in other areas as well. Would you say like specializing in two completely separate styles is spreading yourself too thin?
No, I think you should specialize in one and then you can try the other later.
Right.
Well, that means you're so bad.
Yeah, because like I was thinking like, is it possible then to kind of specialize in like, I don't know, like say one aesthetic is more akin to what you would see in like Nintendo games, like Mario and such, and then the other specialization will be somewhere that is more akin to like a traditional AAA.
Yeah, it's there's few people who can do this and do this well. It just takes time. You got to respect the idea that each one of these disciplines to be as good as some of the best that are at it.
Oh yes.
It took them a while, you know, and the people that I know who can do like multiple things like really well are usually really old people because they have time to like change, you know. They spend like 10 years on one thing to be really specialized, and they spend another 10 years on another thing.
It's
very similar to what's happening with me right now, right? Like I've already spent nearly over a decade becoming a character artist, right? And now I'm like learning how to program for about 2 years now almost. So give me like another 10 years in that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd be pretty good at that too, you know?
I just wonder because like I remember like hearing arguments about like if you do have like two separate styles in your repertoire, like keep separate portfolios. You know, like they talk about like make your portfolio so apparent that what you are focusing on, so that like it doesn't give any room for interpretation of anything else. And I was kind of wondering if you had any insight or opinion on.
Yeah, usually that's just people who say this or give that advice usually try to avoid hurting your feelings. It's easier to say that you should just have more in your portfolio than that you suck.
Sorry. No, I meant the other way around. Like, when they advise you to like, don't have like, don't have.
Yeah,
these two
but think
styles.
about that in practice. Sorry to interrupt, but think about that in practice. Like, how many people do you know that, like, it's not like I have like a whole different portfolio of just amazing, like, fantasy kittens, you know? And when it's time to work in the fantasy kitten industry, I pull that out, you know?
Right.
Like, I just don't know. I just don't know that many artists who do that or have portfolios in which that's true. Sure, that's a smart strategy if it exists.
I kind of wonder because like when you see companies, I'll give you an example. Like companies like Insomniac, they worked on Ratchet and Clank for the longest time, and now they're working on much more realistic proportion games like Spider-Man or Sunset Overdrive. Are those they must have been the same concept artists. Who,
No, they got new ones.
no? Oh, they got new ones.
Dave Wilkin was the one that worked on Spider-Man. He was the lead concept artist.
And do they
They
just
didn't get
go
the creature. I'm sure the Creature Box guys helped out, but they were not the leads.
like then it kind of like makes me wonder like, oh, do they just kind of look for that specialized person at that specific time rather than trying to like rely on their in-house concept artists all the time?
No, he's in-house. They hired him. He was the lead concept artist.
Mm-hmm.
This is some of his work right here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the game that's been made, I mean, if you look at the Spider-Man, and they did have artists there. They did have artists there who worked on like some of the other games that are more realistic. Yeah. So it's not like they were too far removed. Where's the concept? I saw the other day. But they weren't, yeah, they had new talent. You know?
I guess I'm a little bit like kind of torn in terms of like where I should take my art. That's all. That's why I was asking this very vaguely veiled question.
Yeah,
But,
sure. I get it, man. It's deep rooted in confusion and of like where you stand and insecurities that are deep rooted, you know, that are very healthy and normal. Just to be clear, you know, these types of questions and insecurities, like I was saying, are completely normal and they happen all the time. All right. I'm just trying to like lay out like some raw facts, you know what I mean? So that you can do with that information what you will.
yeah.
But without like crushing dreams, right? Like I think that it is possible to do multiple facets if that's something you care about. I do know people who can do that, but they aren't nearly as good, right, as like someone who truly specializes in each field that they've attempted, except for, let's say, a few people that I can think of, right? But these people are already art directors, you know, and they've been in the industry for decades. Right. And so they're not good examples to follow because you can't do that without decades of experience or at least a good amount of experience, right? So the most practical use of your time as of now is to pick a thing and just get really good at it, or generalize and just try to get your foot in the door, you know, but expect what I just told you, you know, about like the positions and how much it may offer you. It's going to be very unlikely that you're going to get a really, really big studio gig with a generalized portfolio, as I demonstrated, right? Because they can afford hiring specialists. You know? Like, why would they hire, let's say, someone who can mediocrely draw a character design, but also can mediocre draw environment design, and mediocre can draw like prop designs or weapon designs, rather, vehicle designs, when I can probably get one of each of these people who specializes in each of these things, you know? Like, would you want a plumber who specializes in plumbing, or someone who's just like a handyman who kind of does some plumbing and kind of does some electricity stuff, right? And could do some home improvement things, right? Or would you want someone who specializes in each one of these things to do those specialized tasks? Right.
Point taken.
You know, so it's like when you start having experience in the industry, you see what I'm talking about. Like, there's a reason why AAA games have the quality of the games that they do, usually in the visual department at least, right? Or even in just tech, right? Because they have like the best of those industries like working there, doing their best for these studios, you know? And so generalized people can get work, though. I'm not trying to shoot that down. But I was pretty certain right away, like from the very beginning, that I wanted to do characters.
Yeah, and I think that makes my personal goal very clear. And I guess from here on out, it's just more like, am I kind of like just? Sorry, I'll probably have to form it better before I ask.
Well, here's a good way of kind of figuring out what you're really into. Like, take a look at the most of your work, and then figure out what you do more of. And then that's like a good sign that might be something that you really enjoy. And then if you, I know you were like on the trick of like trying to diversify and try to really improve your portfolio even further. My strategy would be like you should do that to then go back and make the one thing that you really like to do even better.
Mhm.
You know, because you have a broader understanding of multiple different things, and that's almost always helpful to you.
Right? I guess like part of my dilemma is just that like I know that like my styles and taste are very considered niche in the North American realm, and I wonder if that is actually hurting my chances in many ways.
Yeah, maybe in North America, maybe some studios, then stop looking there, look elsewhere. Right?
Right.
Like
But-
follow your heart, man.
No, but
You know
like
that,
my
North
heart
America-
says like I like having 9 to 5 work hours.
Yeah, sure. You say that now until you have the 9 to 5 work hours. The whole grass is greener
I know. No,
fallacy,
I mean,
right?
yeah,
Now,
no,
trust me, man. You gotta trust me. I know who people who worked at Blizzard
Mhm.
and complained all the time.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so if
I
you
don't-
have
I
that
don't-
personality type of like, you know, you already
I
like a
believe it.
thing, you gotta follow that. Trust me, because I know way too many people who have not done that and regret it.
Mhm.
Like, because they said the same argument that you're making, which again is very healthy and normal, right? But like I always tell people, there's two ways of learning. I tell my children this too. One, you can trust those who you believe have the authority or the insight that you are looking for, right? Or you can learn for yourself, learn the hard way, you know. And so I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to give you that insight, give you that foresight, so you can make really intelligent and educated choices. You know, I like to say this: don't make the same mistakes that I made. Make your own. If I give you fair warning and you make that mistake anyway, then it's like, no, it's your fault, right? And
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and- and it's how I like to kind of position my advice on these types of things. Like I just know way too many artists who've said very much same things as that you're talking about, and I'm trying to tell you like you should look elsewhere. There's plenty of us studios that are looking for your style stuff. You just got to have a really outstanding portfolio. You have to have something that challenges stuff like Paul Kwan. You know what I mean?
Sorry?
Paul Kwan's Zeroness.
oh, Paul, yeah,
You got to challenge his work because it's in the same vein of aesthetics.
right. Kind of knock on the
And-
front door. Kick
Yeah, and right now it's not there yet.
No,
It's not too far. It's not too far.
more than aware.
If you stay focused, you might be able to do it, my man. You know? And so you just got to stay focused. That's how I feel about it. All right. Any other questions? I'll take one last one.
Yeah, I was wondering when you did all the studies that you did in order to kind of internalize the stuff that you did for all your sci-fi designs, what kind of stuff did you look at?
Cars and industrial design, mostly.
What is industrial design?
Oh, just like the designing of like products and stuff. Like, you know, like your phone would be in the category of industrial design. You know? Just like product design essentially. And then just finding like how I can marry that with like, you know, the traditional sci-fi stuff that people are used to seeing. You know?
Oh, okay.
But that's pretty much it. It's nothing like fantastic about that one. But I like to try to find some similarities in the types of stuff that I find really interesting. So, for instance, if I really like some sort of fantasy element, then I'll try to look at something that's closer to that. You know, like maybe some crazy fashion designs. You know, and then if I feel like I should challenge something that's really traditional, like something like a sci-fi character, then maybe I'll like look at something that has nothing to do with it. But typically, I do the previous one a lot more, right? And then when I start to really go on the fringe of what I can do with that aesthetic, then that's when I start looking even further out, you know?
Hmm.
But it's a very dangerous ground because if you go too far out, then you just start making super strange looking shit. And people don't know what the hell you're drawing. you know.
Okay.
And so that's why I try to avoid going too deep. But anyway,
Oh
I'm
damn!
gonna-
I had one last question, but the picture uploaded upside down. I was going to say, what do you think of my jumper?
wait, what? What'd you?
What do you think of my jumper? It's in Skype.
You got a new drawing? Let me see.
No, it's not. It's not a drawing. Although it's upside down. I don't know why that happened. It's upside down on the desktop.
It's not this right here.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. It's weird. It's upside down and Skype.
Yeah, big boy. All right, folks. It was a good class. Thanks for asking all the great questions, and thanks for pushing your work pretty far as well. I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Don't be strangers to one another. Talk to each other, help each other out, guide each other through. And I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Have a good one.
Toodaloo.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.